Hi there, I am Dani, spiritualtherapist.com, and today I'm extremely thrilled to bring you one of the most intrepid explorers of this modern time. The man on the screen is 6'7". He has traveled around the world on many expeditions, but today we're going to focus on Antarctica. And this man on the screen is going to introduce the secrets and the revelations of what happened after World War II when the Nazis weren't missing. Where did they go? Did some of them end up in Antarctica? This man on the screen is going to let you know exactly what happened. Welcome, Brad Olsen.
The man on the screen. Hey, it's good to be here, Dani. Thanks for having me on your show.
You are welcome. And dude, I have to say that honestly, you're one of the tallest people I've ever met at 6 foot, gorgeous, 7. When we were all at Mount Shasta, like when you walked in the room, there was a lull and a quiet. And you were this tall giant just striding in with his sunglasses on. And everyone's like, oh, who's that rock star? And everyone's like, it's Brad Olsen, the expert in Antarctica and Titicaca. There you are. Oh, we need some music in the background here. We really do. But yes, those were the sunglasses, everybody. So you can be
there
in
they are.
Exactly.
My barrette.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so excited. I've been looking forward for months for getting you on screen here with me and for us to really go explore, because so many people around the world now are asking questions they've never even thought to ask because they didn't know. So now we're going to go into my first question for you today, Brad Olsen, is when you were a little boy growing up, did you have any idea that you might become one of the world's most renowned explorers?
Wow. Well, I'm not sure that I am the world's most renowned explorer or even one of them, but hey, take a compliment. Interesting question because no, I didn't know what my fate would be, but I've just started to talk about this on interviews. There was a period when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was walking home from school and something just stopped me in my tracks. And it was under this beautiful willow tree right close to where I lived. And a voice just started talking to me. And I was a very skinny and awkward kid. You can imagine, to grow as tall as I am, there was a period where I was kind of an ugly duckling before I became the swan kind of thing. And this was in that period where I was this pretty awkward, skinny kid and didn't know what my place was going to be in the world. And this voice said to me that just be patient. There's a plan for you. And the word that was used that I'll never forget was, you're going to be a super influencer. And I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know at the time. Now I do. It's pretty apparent that I am doing that and doing my best to be in service to others. I've never really felt like this was all about me. I'm not trying to stroke my ego, but I love to explore. I've now been to all 7 continents of the world. And 3 years ago, I was in South America, driving across the whole southern part of the continent, and then getting down to Ushuaia, Argentina, where I got on a boat, a sailboat, to go to Antarctica for 26 days. And of course, I know we're going to talk a lot about that, but to answer your question, I kind of had this spark in me from the time I was 9 years old that something was going to transpire in my life. And as we know, when you're a kid, you think, well, my life kind of sucks and I don't want to look like this. But everything always changes, doesn't it? And so it has changed for the better. And I'm very pleased with the decision I made, because I grew up in Chicago. I went to Illinois State University. I thought I was going to be an advertising executive, and now I would be living in a big house in the suburbs, probably making a lot of money, writing ad copy with 2.5 kids, but always thinking, where is my life could have gone had I really followed my heart and my intuition to travel the world, which I've now done. And whoa, there's still a lot more places to go, but I've hit the big 7 continents. So that's a great start. And for my age, I got a lot of my traveling under my belt in my 20s, right out of college. I just decided, no, I'm not looking for that career in advertising. I want to see the world. And so I was backpacking solo through Europe in 1988, and that's kind of what got it all started. And just
That's
got the
amazing.
travel bug after that. I thought, oh, I'm in my 20s. I think I'm going to just keep going. So I was an English teacher in Japan, and then all my trips have been self-financed. In fact, the very first book I wrote is called World Stompers, a global travel manifesto, and that's the cover.
Ah,
And so this is in my latest book, my 10th book, Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet, which has a lot of my information on Antarctica, which I think we'll talk about here shortly.
absolutely. So the book you just held up there does catalog, as you said, the other 10 books that, or other 9 books that you've written throughout your long, intrepid exploration of the world career. Yeah, excellent. So, and again, we're going to put all the details of how to get hold of you and how to access these books and this information. But inside that current book, Beyond Esoteric, I've seen you on some television shows talking about it, promoting it, which is great. And yeah, you cover a lot of the mapping and a lot of photographs of Antarctica in there. But before we do get into Antarctica, thank you so much for sharing that little information and message you got as a child, because as I mentioned to you before we started recording today, that I'm absolutely convinced that all of the main speakers right now, all of the main influencers right now have all had something happen to them in childhood, be it an actual visitation, be it a dream, be it a voice, be it something that changed the course of their lives that they didn't see coming. There's always an ability to map that kind of sequence of cellular genome, cellular frequency that takes us ultimately on a journey that brings us to our passion, because it is about passion. And I applaud you for being so brave and going where so many people have never gone, only dreamt of. Other than Antarctica, which we're coming to, can you tell us a specific particular experience you've had on the planet that, even though you knew you were going somewhere, just blew your mind in particular? I know it's hard to pick one or two, but can you have a go?
Yeah, and people quite frequently ask me what my favorite places were. And so I've always gravitated towards historical or sacred places, as I call them. In fact, I've written several books in that series on sacred places. And just show the screen here real quick. Some of those titles: North America, Europe, around the world. And another author did Sacred Places of Goddess. But to answer your question, probably the other real formative moment in my life that was very transformative was when I climbed to the top of the Great Pyramid in Egypt one night. And now that's not allowed. It was, let's chalk it up as a youthful indiscretion. That's the kind of guy I was back in the early 90s, just going for the opportunity when I saw it. And so it was during the sound and light show, and they would light up all the monuments, and I was there on a full moon night. It was so beautiful, Dani.
Wow.
So one time I tried to do it and I got shouted down, and so I'm walking around the Great Pyramid, and I knew that there was this little trick of the eye. When a bright light appears in darkness, you're momentarily blinded for several seconds before the light can adjust. So I just rounded the corner where there were some guards, and I'm about halfway across the western facing side of the Great Pyramid, and the sound and light show lit up the pyramid, or it was lit up, and then it went dark. And I thought, this is my opportunity. In the dark, I just started scrambling up the blocks, and each one of the blocks is about the size of a washing machine or a sink. So, and I'm a tall guy, so it was easy for me to get my legs up and jump up and scramble up. And then the lights came on again. I was about a third of the way up, and I had to hide in the shadows and didn't get shouted down. So kept going. One more time, the lights came on, and I hid in the shadows, and I got up there. It was amazing. And it was transformative because just a few months earlier, less than a year, I was still teaching English in Japan, and my beloved grandfather passed away, and I felt really bad that I wasn't able to fly back for the funeral and be there during his wake and be with my family. So I was kind of carrying this guilt with me, and when I was up on the top of the Great Pyramid, I just started meditating, and we used to call him Pa, and I said, Pa, I'm really sorry I wasn't at your funeral, and I couldn't make it back in time. I got notice the day of the funeral, so it was
Oh.
literally impossible.
Mm.
And he came to me and he said, look at you, Brad, look where you're at. And there's the
Oh.
lights of Cairo on one side and the darkness of the Sahara on the other. And I just said, oh, Pa, I love you so much. And thank
Oh.
you for all you've done for me. And it was a resolution. And I'll tell you, Dani, and in that moment, I went from being agnostic atheist to understanding that we're all spiritual beings having this
Mm.
human experience. And still to this day, when I relate that story, I get little goosebumps on my arm. So I know it's still a very emotionally charged
Yeah.
period of my life that was
Yeah.
very instrumental in the course that the rest of my life would take after that.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, and obviously clearly a beautiful marker in your life, a real reference point for you to go back. And if there's any question of doubt in the spiritual connection to the physical connection of us beings, then that for you is probably the most significant marker point that you have. That's a beautiful story. Talking of climbing pyramids, just want to share a quick one back with you. In the UK, because I'm obviously from England, I say obviously, but I am from England originally, our pyramids in England, our man-made pyramid in England is Silbury Hill.
Yep.
Silbury. And you are forbidden to climb that hill. I've climbed it 6 times. Don't want to encourage it. It's got nothing to do with me, but it is so steep. And I went up there one time with my friend Michelle, who just got married to Matt. Congratulations, Michelle Humphrey. Love you. Went up there with her. And then we decided to go in, black bin liners, trash bags, and like sledge down. Please don't anyone try that, because you will die. It was so steep. We were going down. We didn't need the bags. It was so slippery. But we climbed that pyramid, and it's like a green mound. And then when you stand on top, the very first time I went there, Brad, there were other girls climbing up behind me. One of them is my friend, Dr. Mangia Samantha Lawson. I did a broadcast with her, and she discovered really what black holes are. That's her whole scientific hypothesis. And I was trying to get up there before she got there. I got to the top by myself. I closed my eyes. I felt the energy, and I could see all of these women, countless women, all linking arms and all moving together. And they were all saying fire and thunder, fire and light, fire and thunder, fire and light. So clairaudiently, that resonance, that chant from however many years ago was still there, residually still there, permanently still there. Amazing. What a lot of people don't know about Silbury Hill is it is one of the single most active points for UFOs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. They're now trying to kind of split. They're trying to do all sorts of things with our past memories, what we think is this and what we think is that. But when you stand on top of that hill, you'll see more crop circles there than anywhere else, and some are fake. But here's the other thing that most people don't know. Diagonally on top of that mound, on top of that pyramid, you go all the way down to a beautiful ancient building called Marlborough College. There is another mound in the grounds of Marlborough College, and that mound is called Merlin's Mound. I climbed that too with my friend Michelle, and we got caught. And we ran away like 2 10-year-old girls. Yeah, but it was funny. But no foul, no harm, no damage was done. And again, not encouraging people, but just wanted people to understand there are these sacred sites that we are forbidden. No, we're discovering everything now, safely and respectfully, but discovering all these different secrets. So thanks for letting me share about my pyramid story. Now back to you, Boo. You want to head into Antarctica and tell us why you even went there in the first place?
Well, pyramids actually are part of the reason I went there, to look into all of these claims that we've heard of civilizations under the ice, including pyramids poking through, to 3 giant motherships, which the alphabet agencies have nicknamed Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria after Columbus's 3 ships. And as you saw in my presentation, the hidden anomalies of Antarctica, I think I've pinpointed one of those in what turns out to be the claim of Germany pre-World War II called New Schwabenland. There is one of these ships there. I did not travel to that area. That's basically straight below South Africa. So where I went was the Palmer Peninsula, which is that finger that sticks out from Antarctica and down to the other finger of the southern tip of South America. And we crossed that Drake Passage in 92 hours in stormy seas. And boy, did I get seasick on that trip.
Wow.
Lost about 25 pounds on that trip as well. I mean, if you want a crash course diet, take a sailboat to Antarctica. I guarantee you'll lose some weight.
Oh my God.
So I was going down there to investigate all this stuff. And it began before the trip started when I went to a New Year's Eve party at the Ushuaia Yacht Club. And I started talking to captains, other crew members, people that were knowledgeable about Antarctica, and just getting a download on that. But they didn't really know much about any of the antediluvian sites or UFO sites. So we went on the trip and started going to different research stations, and 6 different ones all together. And I'd always ask the same questions for anybody who'd talk to me. Do you know anything about craft under the ice? Have there ever been any UFO sightings? Do you know anything else that's really odd or anomalous about Antarctica you could tell me? And for the most part, everybody didn't know. Not to say that they were hiding anything, but I think most cases they just didn't know. But a few people did open up, and one of which was at Argentinian base. And they said they had reports from another sister base called Belgrano 2, where they did have some UFO sightings just the weeks before I was there. And so it was an interdepartmental banter between the bases where they said, oh yeah, we saw these orbs and craft flying over, and it was quite amazing. The other thing I found out is that there's definitely a ginormous no-fly zone, not over the South Pole. You can land a plane there, but there is a quotant of it at about the 89th parallel south, where hundreds of miles is a big no-fly zone. And I can tell you that's way up high on the polar plateau. So it's over 2 miles thick of ice. And they are doing the ice cube experiments and some other monitoring of the weather systems at the South Pole, Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. But why do they need this giant no-fly zone? And that is the presumed entrance into the ice area that Admiral Byrd saw when he flew over, and the hole was big enough that he felt confident enough to take his plane down into it, circle around, and come back out.
Right. This is amazing. Let's pull back a little bit for those people who've never even heard or even conceived anything beyond penguins and polar bears at either end. How did you get to Antarctica? Where is it near? How did you get the funding? Because we're always told, oh, it's going to cost a lot of money. So much money. Don't go there. Oh, you'll be sick. Oh, it'll be too cold. Oh, you'll get frostbite. Can you do a little bit of setting up for us so we can also encourage other people to think about their dreams and their expeditions on this planet, please?
Sure. Well, first of all, polar bears and walruses are only in the North Pole. There are no bears down there, or walrus seals. Now there are elephant seals and leopard seals and quite a few other species of seals, as well as many species of penguins. And there are many species of whales. And we actually had an encounter where a whale pod swam right underneath our sailboat. Just incredible. So the setup was, I wanted to go down there, had a budget. It turned out we got on board for $6,000 a person in cash. To pay by a credit card, it would have been $2,000 more. So we had to extract money from all the ATMs in Ushuaia for several weeks to be able to come out with that much, because they only let you take out about $275 a day.
Oh my God. And you're in Japan at this time?
Stack of Argentinian money at the end.
Oh, you're in Argentina.
Yep, in Ushuaia. So we knew we were going to be on the trip at New Year's Eve, and they were doing a trip to Cape Horn and back. And then so when they came back, then we got together with our group and paid and got on board. So it was on a 72-foot boat out of Gdansk, Poland, of all places. And it was the maiden voyage going down there with a captain and a co-captain who were experienced at sea, including polar trips. They had been up to
That was handy.
North Polar. Yeah, well, that wasn't really revealed until we were on board and heading down there. And they made a couple rookie mistakes, nothing life-threatening, but for example, taking us into the tailwind of the storm, which was very rough seas. And yeah, there were 14 of us, and I think 10 out of 14 got really violently ill. Fortunately, our co-captain did not, and he sailed us through. And then we got down to the islands off of the Palmer Peninsula, starting with a base that was a Polish base. So there were 11 Poles and 3 Americans on our trip. And so we went to the Arktowski base with our first drop anchor on King George Island. So the outer Shetland Islands, I think they're called. But King George Island, one of the biggest islands out there. And then we went ashore and brought them fresh fruit and vegetables, and they were so happy to see us. We got showers. Boy, I can't tell you how nice that was. And we're able to spend, we always slept on the boat, but we'd come ashore on the dinghy and had 2 meals with them, and also our one night sing along and having drinks. And here so you learn all these really quirky things when you're down there. For example, they showed us the blue ice, which they chopped out with an ice pick from the glaciers. When ice gets really compacted and becomes really, really, really old, that's my British womanism. Yeah. When everything is really, really, really nice.
Really, really, really nice.
There it is, straight from the British mouth.
Yeah.
And so we have this blue ice in our drinks. And so they start pouring the whiskey and mixer in there, and it starts popping like popcorn. Wow. Never heard that before. Pop, 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 pop. So it's got these tiny little micro air bubbles in it, and it pops when it melts. Didn't know that till I got down there. So I had a great time with the Poles. And then 2 days later, we set sail again. And then we were within all the channels and different islands before we actually set foot on the Antarctica continent. But because we were out of the high seas, nobody got seasick again. And then the trip really started to become really, really, really nice.
Really, really nice. Can I ask you a question, please? Yeah. When you say base, the first Polish base, can you explain what a base is? And also, what time of year are we in?
Okay, so you can only go to Antarctica from now, November, until early March, and then it shuts down. The weather is just way too harsh. So the base is a research station. So they were studying a large multi-species penguin colony right outside of Arktowski. They were also doing weather monitoring, and this is pretty common for the research stations that are down there. They have scientists there, and they're studying either the fish, the ice, which in this particular part of Antarctica is melting rapidly. But what's paradoxical, and I show this slide that NASA did right before my trip in my presentation, of other areas of Antarctica that are actually growing with ice and getting colder.
Balance.
So somehow Mother Nature knows how to balance. That's why Miami Beach hasn't gone underwater yet, or other coastal areas being inundated, that there is just some kind of balance to all this. Now, it's not to say that this isn't a threat or humans are having some kind of way of hastening this melting, because we are, but it just is different in other locations in Antarctica. Some areas are getting more storms and colder temperatures and more snow. And this part of Palmer was actually shrinking in ice. And you know that because there were images and paintings even of around the Palmer base, which is the American station that we got to visit, where the whole ice shelf on the island, Anvers Island, where it's located, has melted so much that it's broken off pieces and revealed islands which have never been seen before. They never even knew they were there because they were under the pack ice. And now with the melting, they can see the mountain range in the distance, which they hadn't been able to see before from the Palmer station. And these new islands emerge. So, which is really interesting because in my presentation, I showed the Piri Reis map from 1519, and it shows an area of the Antarctic coastline with islands on it that are still yet to be discovered, that are still under the pack ice. So how did they know that 500 years ago? It's just quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Some of the mystery still surrounding Antarctica.
Definitely. They're finding the same thing in the Hawaiian Islands too. There are other mountainous ranges coming up from under the ocean that have been covered by the ocean. So the whole planet is in a physical rebalance. And she's so clever. She's a clairsentient being. We mustn't give ourselves too much credit for destroying her. You know, she is a lot smarter than we are. I think in one fell swoop, she could say, right, you lot, bye. You know, think dinosaurs, ice age, bye-bye. Anyway, moving on, my love, moving on to Antarctica platform.
Sure. Well, so most of the stations or research bases we went to were active. Some were seasonal, meaning the crew would come in for these three or 4 months and then take off in March. Some are around the clock, meaning they'll keep a skeleton crew during the winter, at which time in the winter months in Antarctica, there's only 1,000 people on the entire continent. And this is the 5th largest continent of the world. So for those who think that the world is vastly overpopulated, well, Antarctica's got plenty of room, but
good point. Good point.
Probably not so pleasant to live down there year round. But it's also the most volcanically active continent in the world. So that does give rise to the notion that there could be massive under ice domes that have been melted with geothermal activity, in which case maybe you could live there comfortably year round. So these are the kind of mysteries that I was very interested in discovering more of. And in fact, when we went to the Ukrainian base, we walked right over. A year later, it was discovered there was a massive under ice chamber discovered that went on for miles. We walked right over the top of it to go visit some of the old outbuildings. Now it's Vernansky, but it had been a British base that was spying on the Nazis during World War II. And some of these other buildings, which are now museums, they don't even lock the door. And you walk right in and there's still old cans of food on the shelf and the old radios they used to use. And you can just sit right down in the chair and live vicariously how they used to be out there. It's so there's so many things like that are just so cool when there's nobody around, and these places can just be left for austerity. Another great thing about going down there to be on a boat where we could just jump on our dinghy, go ashore, explore a penguin colony. So there is a bit of a misnomer that Antarctica is shut down, that it's closed, that you can't go there. And we went there and we had pretty much freedom to do what we wanted to do. Now, mind you, we were in a very small area in relation to the entire continent, but 15 full days. And again, we could just jump in a dinghy, and we went up to, after we learned the technique, with an ice pick and got our own blue ice, had some cocktails, little things like that.
It's so great. You mentioned the Polish base, you mentioned the Ukrainian base. So some of these bases are going to turn out to be military bases, one will assume, but were most of them scientific? And how much of the world do you know was actually represented in terms of a Polish base, a Ukrainian base?
I think there are 54 bases in total, but For example, the USA maintains the Palmer Base, the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, and McMurdo, which is the largest base of them all. It's
Right.
like a small city.
Mm.
So there are probably about 25 or 30 countries that have some kind of presence there. On the route that we took, we went to Polish Arctowski. Then we saw some in the distance, both on King George Island, and then we went into Deception Island. Is a sunken volcano cone. It was really amazing. You had to go through one narrow passage, and there's a submerged rock that has sunk ships. You'd be really in trouble if you hit that. And
Wow.
we went through Neptune's bellows into an active volcano cinder cone. It hadn't erupted since '69, so there was no danger in that. But we dropped anchor offshore an old whaling station and went ashore and explored around and saw gravestones from Scandinavian guys that died in the 19th century, carved in wood. See, nothing deteriorates down there because it's always so cold that
Right.
even life forms. There is a 3,000-year-old freeze-dried seal in the dry valleys that doesn't decompose because there's no moisture or humidity or warmth
Yeah.
to decompose it. So things just stay perfectly preserved down there because it's cold all year round.
Yeah.
So we
You
got to
didn't.
do that, and then we'll just take you through the other bases we went to. Then it was Gonzalez, Chilean base, the Brown Argentinian base, Vernansky, and then we went to another old British base that was used for spying on the Germans that is now a museum. And you can actually send a letter from there, southernmost mailbox in the world. And then because there were 3 Americans on board, I got the word out to the station chief and said, well, we're tax-paying citizens. You should let us come ashore, because they're one base that do not take requests. But since we were 3 Americans, they let us come to Palmer, and we got to
Mm.
tour that facility, which was really, really, really nice.
Really, really nice. Can you describe it a little bit? What it looked like and felt like and smelt like, and take us there?
And this is sort of a more modern base. There, we went out to the older base, and you cannot leave anything behind. So the only thing that was left were just the cement foundation blocks they couldn't extract, but everything else has to be removed. So Palmer is a modern base, and they built it in separate buildings because they realized that if one building catches on fire, you're all screwed. So everything is kind of separate with walkways. And they're doing a lot of marine biology research there. And fortunately, they couldn't let us see the tank, but they have a big tank with a lot of species that live underwater, including fish and different kind of, I don't know if it's called coral, but there was another boat that was parallel with our trip, and they were full of scuba divers. And one day we got ashore, we went aboard their boat, and they showed us their videos of what they had been seeing underwater, Dani. And I'll tell you, I'm a scuba diver myself, and
Yeah, me too.
I have never seen so much life and color, and it was amazing what they saw underwater in Antarctica. Quite abundant sea life down there.
So exciting. So much more to discover on our planet that, oh my goodness me. Wow. Okay, continue. I'm not going to stop you. So exciting.
Well, so that was Palmer, and we just went ashore for the day, but then they told us that the island across from them had a whole bunch of wildlife. And so the next day we took turns, and we got dropped off by the dinghy. And again, we had freedom to do whatever we wanted. They'd say, okay, well, we'll just be back in 2 hours to pick you up. So we went and saw a couple penguin colonies, one of which was declining very rapidly in numbers. They're the Adelie penguins, and they used to have a big rookery across the one side of the island. Now that's just pockmarked with groups of these Adelie penguins. So they are decreasing in numbers. But other penguins that are coming from the north, the warmer waters, are now coming into the feeding areas of the Adelie. And those penguins are actually flourishing and increasing in numbers. And those were the chinstrap and the gentoo penguins, which we saw massive colonies. I mean, thousands of birds. And our saying was, you can smell them before you can see them, because they're so big, and and they squawk and they frolic. They're really interesting, fun animals to watch. But right where we pulled up with the dinghy, there was a leopard seal, and he was just laying there on the ice, and there were little blood stains on the ice, and it would just presumably at night, or when it started getting dark, because it never really got fully dark. Well, maybe an hour or two when we were down there. So we got the midnight sun was another experience, because in the southern hemisphere during our winter solstice, their summer solstice, days are very, very long. So this leopard seal was just laying on the ice waiting for a wayward penguin to walk by and just snap it.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh
so
my
you see
God.
nature in action. There we saw some elephant seals, which were really big. And then we were coming back to get the dinghy. Me and Luke Dog, the other American, went a different route from Emily Infinity, who followed our footsteps back to where we're going to get picked up. And these big, I think they were albatross birds, were like dive bombing us. We were getting so close to the nest. And animals do not have much experience with humans. So either they're very brave in doing their attacks to defend their nests, or like the penguins, they just don't see you as a threat, and they're not afraid. They don't run away.
Yeah.
And even the whales swimming under our boats, just they were checking us out like we were looking at them.
That's wonderful to hear, that man hasn't destroyed and murdered and put the fear of, hate into the animals there. Can you tell us about the midnight sun for a minute? Again, some people will never have even heard that, but to bring us through your eyes, your intrepid explorative eyes that you've actually witnessed, how would you describe the scene of looking at a midnight sun, the colors, the temperature, the sounds of animals, if they're there, the stars, like all of that?
Well, you'd only really know that it was the midnight sun if you looked at your watch, but you do notice that the days are very, very long down there. So it was only about 1 a.m. till about 4 a.m. where it would get dark. And then it was twilight for 2 or 3 hours on either end. So what happens is, let's say you're in the South Pole. Right around now, the sun is coming up, and it stays up, and it just corkscrews around for 4 months of perpetual daylight. And then it hits the horizon again, and for 2 months, you get a little twilight. You don't see the sun, and then it goes dark for 4 months total. So the midnight sun just is a reference to being able to see the sun at midnight, which you can only do when you're down near the Antarctic Circle, or in the north, it's the Arctic Circle. And what that denotes is that on the period of the solstice, that everything above the Arctic Circle or below the Antarctic Circle will receive 24 hours of daylight. So then the farther north you go in the North Pole, the longer that 24 hours of daylight will last. So it'll last for weeks or months. So right now in Barrow and Nome, Alaska, the northernmost towns, the sun went down in middle November, and it will not reappear for 2 more months. But going all the way up to 90 degrees north, which is the North Pole, it would be 4 months of total darkness as they experience in the South Pole.
Wow, that's just mind-blowing. And what a beautiful insight you're giving us. This is so exciting, because you're taking us on a journey that a lot of people think they know something, but you're just filling in all of the wonder, that we may even have an opportunity to consider. Thank you so much. Do you want to talk a little bit about any of the bases in particular that blew your mind?
I don't think any of them really blew my mind. They're all pretty much what was expected. The The British base was cool because it was, again, a museum piece. So you're walking in there like you're experiencing the base as it would have been for the guys in the 1940s. So they were set up several different British bases pre-World War II, during World War II, and even after World War II to spy on the Nazis who were setting up their bases in New Schwabenland, most particularly Base 211 or the New Berlin base. And I know where that was located. That was in near the Schumacher Ponds area. In fact, in my book, I have a map, which was designed by the Nazis, and I reprinted it here. And so all those mountain ranges have German names. Schumacher Sea is on here, and not far away in the those mountain ranges right outside of it, that's where they built their New Berlin base. And that is where the Operation High Jump went down to confront this Nazi presence. And that was after World War II was finished.
Right. And this is a crucial point in the history of our world, the true history of our world that's been covered up. For those that do not know what Project Paperclip is and Project High Jump, can you please give us a synopsis?
Sure. Well, Project Paperclip was what our intelligence services called the program of extracting Nazi scientists as well as spy chiefs that helped set up the CIA, namely Reinhard Gehlen, not NASA scientists such as Hermann Oberth and Werner von Braun, who sent a man to the moon with the Apollo rocket shots. And this is what a lot of people don't know about Paperclip. We also brought over their psychiatrists who started MK Ultra, MK Naomi, and the MK is mind control. The K is spelled control in German. It should be a big hint that a lot of this stuff came over from their mass psychiatrists to really indoctrinate us through these different mind control techniques, including mass medication. And that is what the fluoride in the water is. It's nothing good for your teeth. That's all make-believe cover story. It's for controlling us.
Yeah.
We could do a whole show on MK Ultra, and in fact, I have a chapter on MK Ultra in Beyond Esoteric, so there's a lot more of that information.
Brilliant. Go back to the book again, please. Hold it up and show us, because it's a double title: Beyond Esoteric, and the bottom part is
Escaping Prison
Planet, which is Planet Earth. And thank you so much. And you know, this is so important, because this isn't just a trip to Antarctica and all lovely hearing about the environment, which is amazing. We are helping to fill in the missing holes in humanity as we are in this mass ascension period, a mass awakening, as people are calling it. And these are very important and crucial details. And I wanted to find someone, which happens to be you, who can actually prove they've been to Antarctica. They have seen towns with German names. Why, in all the wherewithal on the whole planet, would that be so if there had not been a German Nazi presence? Because a lot of people think after the Nuremberg trials, you know, what happened? They got in prison. No, a lot of the rocket scientists, psychiatrists, as you say, research scientists, developers, inventors, genius brains. I mean, I don't want to criticize the German people. They're a beautiful race. They're very smart people, just the shitty ass, fucking horrible Nazi bastards. Yeah, they're not getting off. So they were taken to places like Antarctica, right? So back to MK Ultra, Project Paperclip taking them, Project High Jump. This is the big one.
Well, it was actually Operation High Jump.
Operation High Jump.
The Project Paperclip was just to extract the Nazis into certain governmental programs here in America, but they escaped in various ways. And I do outline the rat lines, as they were known, with help by the Vatican. to get a lot of high-ranking Nazis out of the country and give them new identities, new passports, startup money to start their new lives in South America and in many other countries around the world. They basically escaped justice following World War II. Look, if the Nuremberg trials were real, there wouldn't be a few dozen on trial. There would be thousands,
Absolutely.
literally thousands, and there weren't. So that should give you a little tip that a lot of them escaped. When we were driving through Bolivia 3 years ago, I had the Lonely Planet book, and I'm reading about this little town, Poatsi, a mining town. It says, Klaus Barbie lived out the rest of his life behind a lumber mill in this small town, and you can go see where he escaped justice. Like, they're almost glamorizing it. But he was called the Butcher of Leon. He was a terrible guy. He was like
Yes.
Joseph Mengele, also
Mengele.
the medical doctor doing all those experiments on twins at Auschwitz. He lived out his natural life in South America.
Yeah.
So many of these guys, yeah, they went down there and they found support. Martin Bormann, the money man, who was Hitler's number 2 at the end of the war, he kept popping up all over the place in South America. So they got the loot out, you see, and that's really important because they were able to finance a lot of different things, including buying massive land holdings in Chile and Argentina, which exist to this day. They're like little micro nations within these other countries.
Yes.
And this is really important to understand because not only did they ship out the personnel, but also their high technology. And they took most of that down to Antarctica. And that's what they used in the Battle of High Jump. So what High Jump was post-World War II, these British bases had a lot of information that the Nazis were still active in this New Schwabenland area, which is directly below South Africa, which was apartheid and was sympathetic to the Nazi cause. So all the U-boats could get refueled, resupplied, and then head on down. After World War II, these U-boats kept popping up in the Atlantic Ocean. What are you doing down there months after the war end and you're showing up in La Plata, Argentina? And these are big U-boats. They were the Fuhrer's convoy is what left right at the end of the war. A lot of people don't know this. The last battle of World War II was a submarine battle in which the Nazis won. So they got out clean and brought down personnel and materiel, and most likely Adolf Hitler himself, who I'm sure he visited the Antarctica base, but he did live out the rest of his life in South America. And one of the things I was doing when I was in South America was going to some of the places where he had been, and very Germanic, wealthy communities in Argentina and Chile. So San Carlos de Bariloche is like a barbarian city in Argentina. La Falda, another one. So there are these locations where they went and where they still have a presence today. You know, new generations, of course, filling in. So the Battle of High Jump was basically our Admiral Byrd, who is very well experienced in Antarctica, leading an armada of ships, not only US ships, but other allied nations. And the climax was when they got to right offshore the New Berlin base in New Schwabenland, and they were doing reconnaissance, and then they saw some above ground buildings. They started to bomb them. On the second day, the bombers went out and they just dropped from the screen. No sign of those planes or their pilots ever again. Still don't know how they took those planes out. But shortly thereafter, out in the Southern Ocean, the armada of ships is assembled outside of New Schwabenland and the New Berlin base. Up out of the water come UFO craft, submersibles. They were able to manipulate gravity, the water, and they weren't able to be shot down because a big firefight ensued, but they had some kind of force field around them. We couldn't touch them. But what they did was, in a show of force, sliced one of our destroyers in half, sank the ship, everybody on board, presumably dead. You can't live very long in those frigid waters. And that was the USS Murdoch, went down in the Southern Ocean. So there would be evidence on the sea floor. I even went so far as to talk to a salvage company, said if I can come up with a general idea where this ship went down, what would it take to go down there? And they said it would be so expensive and so difficult in those cold waters and so far away. See, that's the thing about Antarctica. The distances are so vast, and it's so far away from everything that it's quite expensive to mount any kind of expedition.
Yeah.
So fast forward to the Battle of High Jump, it was another rout in favor of the Nazis. And so we went hightailing back, and Admiral Byrd on the way back spoke to a Chilean journalist and says, I'll paraphrase, I don't want to frighten anybody, but we are confronted with an enemy that can fly pole to pole at tremendous speeds.
Yeah.
And look, Dani, I don't know of any craft that we're aware of that can fly pole to pole at incredible speeds some 75 years later after the Battle of High Jump.
Absolutely.
And yet here we are.
Absolutely.
Confronted with this Fourth Reich, this third force that has existed the whole time, but nobody knows about.
It has existed the whole time. And just to go back a little bit here, this is also an area of years of study and fascination for me, which is one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have you on too, as someone who's actually been there. So in 1900, with Nikola Tesla, we had all of the advanced technology in development via him that we could possibly imagine, including a tube that he had designed, a floating tube, Brad, that would have gone around the whole entire perimeter of the planet and allowed for travel at more than 1,000 miles per hour. Now, from 1900 to now, apparently we still aren't as advanced as that. What has happened is the arsewipes that run my planet, your planet, our planet, took that technology underground and used it for themselves. Now, the Nazis were known to have advanced technology. Was there extraterrestrial, deals made? Yes, absolutely, yes. But also Nikola Tesla, in his own right, was a brilliant genius too. He himself had shown and shared the blueprint to create anti-gravitational machinery, anti-gravity flying machines. There are those also that say, just look at the periodic table. There were two specific icons on the periodic table that when placed in front of each other would counteract gravity, thus being able to fly machinery. Now go look at the modern day periodic tables, Brad. There's some icons missing. And this is what has happened all the way through his story. So what I heard in terms of the high jump was that the Americans realized, oh shit, the Germans who are in Antarctica, some of what have the Americans funded because they wanted to have the most advanced technology. They wanted themselves flying machinery. They wanted themselves to go against the Russians who put Sputnik up sometime after, but they didn't want to be at risk. What happens? The Nazis got too powerful. They also had possession of Nikola Tesla's particle laser beam that they renamed the Death Gamma Ray Gun. And Tesla wanted no part of that. What people also, dear people, I would so want everyone in the world to understand that we already had all the defenses we needed. We never needed to go to war. Not one boy, not one girl needed ever to die at war, because the particle laser gun that Tesla created could defend a planet from the ground, could defend any kind of incoming attack from the ground. But those filthy, dirty bastards that have been running our planet all this time, they don't care about us. They just care about them warring against each other. It's important that people understand that. So Brad, thank you. Project High Jump, Operation High Jump with William Byrd, Captain William Byrd, who's gone down in history, as you said, as saying, holy shit, there's a problem.
Yeah, it's Admiral Richard Byrd, B-Y-R-D, and he was actually a very famous Antarctic explorer and the very first one to fly over the South Pole. And that's when in his diary, he wrote about finding that hole in the ice. So that really opens up an interesting part of the Antarctica Nazi connection, that there could have been pre-existing ET bases there, particularly reptilian bases, who the Nazis allied with pre-World War II, and presumably got some of this incredible technology. I mean, where the Nazis went in the 10 years from the 1930s until the end of World War II, technologically speaking, has got to be one of the greatest leaps that humanity's ever experienced. And it's largely not even spoken of in our history books. If our history was to be written correctly, and this is in no means glamorizing Nazi fascism, because in my book, the whole first section is neo-fascism, and I talk about a lot of this. But if history were really to be written correctly, they were the first to the moon. They were there in the late 1930s. And there is even a base on the backside of the moon that has a swastika. They built it in the shape of a swastika. It's still there. And our Apollo astronauts saw it, and we've known about it for decades. And why do you think no human has ever been back to the moon since the Apollo moon shots? Or maybe they have, but we certainly don't know about it. In fact, I know they have with the secret space program and other, super
and
soldier
other
who have experiences on the moon.
Oh my God, I know, I get so triggered by NASA. I was so obsessed with NASA for so long. I had my own space agency. I recruited some of the best space engineers on our planet to work at some of the biggest space companies. I truly trusted and believed everything with NASA until I realized that, oh my God, they're treating us like idiots. This is Mickey Mouse stuff. Oh, in 10 years, we hope to have the technology to go to Mars. Oh my God, you naughty people. You're so naughty, and you are so called out on the rug, because we know we've been going up and down to the moon. We've been going to Mars for years. We've been going to Jupiter for years. And people need to know that. I'm so sorry, but you've been made to look like idiots, and you're not idiots. You're very smart. You just believed the wrong people. But now it's time to really open the mind. And Brad, with your proof, with your actual feet on the ground, dedication to exploring, bringing back true information, photographs, your presentations are mind-blowing, by the way. You know, we owe you a real debt of gratitude, mate. We really do.
Well, that's very, very kind for you to say. But Dani, I'm here in service to all. I don't ever want anyone to think this is all about me. Yes, I have books out. Yes, I speak at conferences, but it's to get this information out. And that's why I have on the back of the book, all that is hidden will be revealed. And all this stuff we've been talking about today and so much more has just been withheld from humanity. And if you want to also know what motivated me from the time I was a young child kind of coming into all this, is I often had this epiphany: why aren't we living on a utopia planet? Humans are very smart. We can figure this out. We don't need to fight each other or have war. So why is it that we can't get ourselves together to end poverty, end starvation, end war, have peace on earth? And so this has been a very motivating factor for me to really get to the bottom of a lot of these subjects. And for me, this has been a journey of self-discovery, is putting this together. 480 pages. This is book 3, and the other 2 books in the esoteric series are all unique information as well. That this is what we need to learn, to grow, to bring this planet back to the garden planet it is. So we can escape prison planet and we can transform it into a prism planet.
Yeah,
I
that's
like that analogy.
That is so beautiful.
Like the scene behind you, Dani, what a beautiful garden of a planet we live on.
Yeah.
And it should be that way.
Yeah.
And we should be in harmony with it, with technology that is non-polluting, as you mentioned with Tesla, so much that he gave to the world another person in service to all. You know, he died in abject poverty. What a crime that was. The greatest mind of the 20th century to have to be dishonored in such a way that all his stuff got ripped off, and he died broke. And what a
Yes.
genius mind.
Oh my God, I would say obsessed and sound like a weirdo, but honestly, I'm obsessed with him. I call him my boyfriend, but I mean that in the best way because, so I have one of his particular books that he actually wrote, and I've spoken about this in a couple of other broadcasts I've done because I so want him honored. I so want him remembered. It makes me want to cry how emotional I feel about this man that gave us drone technology, remote control submarines. He realized how to harness the energy of electricity. He created something called alternate current. So Edison was like, direct current, let's build a big old tower and charge the people of the town and have one telephone direction here, and then it'll go to the next town, and making everyone pay for electricity or aerophonics or whatever. Whereas Tesla created a way to harness the energy of our natural, beautiful planet, do it safely, and we would never have had to pay one single electric bill. It's not normal to pay for water, to pay for electric bills. It's not normal. But what Edison did in the anti-marketing strategies, he did something very public. For example, he wanted to show people that Tesla's work was dangerous, that alternate current or AC/DC, alternate current and direct current was very dangerous. It just had to be Edison's way, funded by JP Morgan, and direct current was it. And Edison tried to prove that Tesla was so dangerous that people could get electrocuted from under the ground and up. And they electrocuted an elephant. I think her name was Rosie, a circus elephant, like just bad, shitty things that people did to shut beautiful Tesla down. But the book I have, it's a collection of papers that he wrote, Brad. He wanted to teach the young men up and coming how he thought his inventions through, what they were for, like what they were going to do. And he so believed in humanity. He was a very sensitive man. He was always getting ill. He almost died several times. But his legacy is I don't know anyone else thus far that can actually match. And even in his book, he doesn't criticize JP Morgan. He's grateful for the funding that Morgan gave him for many of his inventions, but he does criticize, and he calls them the one-celled amoebas, or the bacterial microbe men that got in his way, that blocked him, that harmed him, that burnt down his laboratories, that did terrible things to him. Nikola Tesla is one of the biggest, most amazing leaders of this time on this planet, from beginning of his birth in early 1800s to, I think he died in the early 1900s, oh my God, I forget right now.
Middle of World War II.
Yeah, around that time.
44 or so.
Yeah, and in going around the world, like improving telephone stations, early telephone stations, and lights on ships. I mean, he did so much. It's just, I don't know anyone that's done more than him. He was a complete workaholic. He barely slept, but he was so driven. He was so driven. So anyway, I will stop talking about Nikola Tesla now.
He was real tall too, you know? He was about as tall as I was.
And only 142 pounds.
Well, he was real skinny in the end. 1943 was his last picture. And yeah, what a mind. Incredible. Never married, no children, no inheritance to anyone. But right when he died, and I've been to the New Yorker Hotel in New York City, upon passing, they went up there and they confiscated all of his papers, his patents. So many things that he invented are still in classified documents, including direct energy weapons, which he called the death ray. Now we know it as direct energy weapons. So a lot of his inventions, which perhaps he withheld because it could do harm, and he was do no harm kind of mentality. Yeah. But nonetheless, he invented it probably for his own curiosity to see what it would do or what it would be like. But that was all confiscated, and to this day is still, much of which is held as top secret.
It's all been delivered and created, or everything he ever did has already been made. Hence the Nazis having that technology. Dude.
military was all over
Of
that.
course, my God, what about the magnetic levitational trains underground? The networks from one end of the world to another. We can get there in nano time. You know what else bothers me? Concorde. The hell was that about? They took Concorde down, the plane, the supersonic plane. They took Concorde down. Oh no, the plane in front, something fell off it. Concorde was coming up the runway behind it and hit it. So let's take all the Concordes down. Would you just knock that off? Honestly, and I get so cross when I'm on a plane. I'm like, why am I on this old loud bus? To cause maximum stress, take as long as it can. Like, they treat us like idiots, like monkeys, like rats, like fleas on a dog. You know, you guys, your time is up, just so you know. So cross. It's so time just to say everything, be everything, share everything. You know what? People like you, one of the keys for me, when I listen to someone like you and I read what you've done and I watch and I listen to you, one of the things that comes out is humbleness and kindness. Passion, yes. Certainty, yes. Humbleness and kindness. I say the same thing to Alex Collier, Tony Rodriguez, and Elena Denan, and there are others, but that to me is a key tell. Humbleness and kindness. Like you said, Dani, I'm not this, I'm not that, but dude, you don't even know what you've done to help bring us information that others weren't brave enough to go find out.
Oh, that's very, very kind of you to say that. And those you just mentioned, colleagues of ours, Alex Collier, wow, what a great mind. So wonderful to have one-on-one sit down talks with him up in Mount Shasta. And I'll be on with David Rodriguez on Friday doing an interview with him. And so many of these luminaries in the field, yourself included, Dani. Give yourself
my gosh.
You've done a lot to help people understand these somewhat complicated or thorny topics that takes a refreshing view to look at from a different perspective. So I think you've done a great job in your role in this community as well.
Well, thank you so much. That it is about telling the stories and helping people awaken, and like going back in your childhood and asking you, was there a time? And you said, yes, something happened. You were at a really low point, really self-conscious, and something came to you and said, don't worry, it's going to be okay. When we hear stories like yours, and then we see where that the experiences as a child took you to this moment, when we're sharing these great stories with people like you who are bringing us truth, revelation, and real historical data that's been missing, I want people watching these broadcasts to go, oh my God, I have a sense of that. My cellular memory is starting to open up. I am starting to get recall. These are very important times for us to be in a safe place where we don't feel like an idiot because we've been told we're bad, we're liars, we're crazy, we're going to get put away into an institution. But instead, we have a safe place to come to go, oh my gosh, that's familiar. I think I've been there. Like something like you talking about the penguins being smelly. That could just right there. Do you know what I mean, though? Somebody in a past life recall could go, I've been there. I remember that rancid, acrid stench of penguins. And then boom, they start having dreams or recall. It's important, you know, it's important.
Yeah. And the truth resonates. That's the thing. If we were to have this interview even 5 years ago, it would just be really, it would sound so unbelievable to most people, probably myself included. To fast forward to today and have this knowledge of being down there and more information that has come to us, the truth resonates. So when you hear it, as far out as it could be, if we're talking about aliens or humans off planet, it resonates because there is that truth out there. It's sort of like the same way that certain animals have their own version of telepathy. Look at the way the ants can follow each other, or a flock of birds can mimic each other in flight and know what to do without speaking or communicating. There's some kind of communication going on between species. Well, I think that's true with humans too. And in this age we live, which is, give a little perspective, there are still human beings that live in the Stone Age, way deep in the Amazon rainforest or the high valleys of Papua New Guinea. And then we have a breakaway civilization of humans off planet already. Some
Yes.
are being born off planet, but they're still human beings. We're all still human beings. And so I think there is that interspecies telepathy, or whatever we shall call it, that is this communication amongst all of us. And that's how the truth resonates. If one of us is experiencing a form of being human off planet or in a Stone Age community, in a way, that is all of us. And in a way, we can all tap into that kind of consciousness, and it's part of us as well. So a very astute observation you had there, Dani, which I think is indicative of this period that we live in, where there is still such a wide dichotomy of humanity amongst us, yet we're all still part of each other's lives in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a role to lift each other up. We have a role to support each other. Massive. Look at every race, every species, everyone that has love and kindness in them. You know, there shouldn't be a single poor person on the planet, a homeless person, a hungry person. That is not what this planet was designed for by the benevolence. It wasn't. And so we're taking it back and we're sharing truths. It was so important for me today to really help people understand that the Nazis that fled Germany and fled the Nuremberg trials did go into Antarctica and other parts of the world too, did work in an underground base that was reported to have been there for thousands of years. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't really matter, because the fact is it exists. And that so much of the Antarctic area is named after Germany. New Berlin, for example. Like, Brad, how on earth could we possibly explain that?
Oh, and all the mountain ranges around their New Berlin base. It's Gulig, Hoffman Mountains, and all kinds of German names. Schumacher Ponds, named after the pilot who landed on these lakes that never freeze. So there is a fault line that goes right through where their base would be. No wonder they tapped into that free energy source. That fault line goes right up the mid-Atlantic ridge in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean underwater. And it comes up, well, in Iceland to the north, which is the land of fire and ice, and all the way to the very southern part of the planet. That fault line goes right through New Schwabenland. And I do believe that they chose the location of the New Berlin base because it had geothermal activity, and they could have a heat source. They could have warmth underneath the ice. And those U-boats, in my presentation, I showed some images of what Antarctica would look like without the ice. And there are these fjords that cut through the East Antarctic part of the continent that go for hundreds of miles. So if you know what you're doing, and those U-boat commanders were very intrepid explorers, they could go way deep into the interior of Antarctica underwater.
Absolutely.
So it just shows how you can find a place to hide down there. And if it's warm enough in one of these under ice chambers, you could probably make a fairly decent life for yourself there too.
You know, there are reports. Okay, there's a cat looking at me that I've never seen in my life before. I just find that really interesting. Please do not come in here. Very beautiful cat. Please bugger off. I heard in different way things I've looked at over the years that some temperatures underneath Antarctica are up to 73 degrees, right? Perfectly livable in these out. Hey, go away. Naughty. Ah! I swear, go away. They're so rude, cats, aren't they? Then she's like, no, I'm coming in. I'm looking around. Oh my God. How funny is that? That's never happened. Anyway, yeah, so there's so many livable, and we know there's so much on the planet that we just have to get our heads around and let ourselves think a bit deeper. You know, there are tunnels. Hey, cheeky. There are tunnels that go from one end of the planet to the other. There always have been. There are magnetic levitational trains. There's so much technology that has been here for over 100 years. And it's time now to reveal it. So, all right, darling, is there anything that you would like to round out with in particular about your time in Antarctica?
Well, just that it was a wonderful experience. I'm super glad I went. I would go back if I were going with a film crew, and I would like to go in search of the New Berlin base, for example, to go to the New Schwabenland area. And there are still research stations, including German bases, right there in New Schwabenland. It's called Neumayer is their year-round base, and then inland is the Conan base, and that is the location of one of these three motherships, which on Google Earth they were doing excavations in the year 2013, and I did a bunch of screen capture shots of that to see what that was all about. So I'd love to go back and explore those areas, those German named mountains, and
Yeah.
see the Schumacher ponds, and maybe even take a dip, see how cold it is. I did do the polar plunge when I was down there too. Jumped into the frigid water with icebergs floating around. One day it was actually t-shirt weather. So that's another misnomer about Antarctica. It's not always that cold. There are a couple days where we were sun tanning up on the deck of the boat, but other days when it was really frigid cold, including a snowstorm, and there was a foot of snow on the top of our boat one morning. That was pretty cool.
My
So
God.
those kind of things. Yeah, I'd go back, but it would have to be on someone else's dime. I don't think I'd self-finance a trip there. I'll save that for other places of the world I haven't been to yet.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to say that when I saw your presentation in Mount Shasta was it October or September of this year? I've lost time.
end of August, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, end of August, at the end of August, when we were all in Mount Shasta, your presentation was just off the charts. It was so beautiful, professional, mind-blowing. The pictures, the photographs, the way that you take us on an entire journey, the maps and the systems that you showed us, the seal that had been frozen and preserved all these years, and that you took photographs of the actual signposts of all these different stations and areas, and it was truly magnificent. Now, where are you going to be speaking next so people can come and actually watch you live speak?
So I just did my last presentation of the year in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. Now everything is in 2022. I'll be at the Sedona Equinox Conference in middle of March, followed up with the very next weekend at the UFO Mega Conference in Las Vegas. And then I'm also speaking at the Human Origins in Albuquerque in May. Hopefully Contact the Desert comes back in a live format, and they'll have me speak there at the end of May. And then I'm also on for the Gaia Sphere Conference in September. So Gaia TV is starting their own conference, broadcast out live to 180 nations, and very honored to be asked to be a part of that. So at least 4 confirmed for next year, and certainly more will be added on. If anybody wants to know where my next presentations are going to be, I put them up on bradolsen.com. There's a link to click on for all my upcoming conferences and appearances.
Brilliant. That's so good. Okay, Brad, honestly, what a joy, what an honor. I'm so grateful that you got time. We've been trying to do this for weeks and weeks, and I'm so glad that we did it. I'm sure that people are going to really enjoy learning more about you, reading your books, especially your latest one, if you'd like to just hold it up there. One more time. Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet by the great intrepid explorer, Brad Olsen.
And you can go to cccpublishing.com is the website that I manage. So all book orders of mine that go through that website, I can sign copies for people on their way out. So
yeah. And honestly, let's just say something about that, because your publishing company, you will get the profit, not friggin' Amazon or any of the other places that take, how many people end up with 75 cents for their life book, their work that someone else publishes. This way, you get it. So say your publishing company one more time, please.
It's CCC Publishing. So the letter C 3 times, publishing, one word.com.
Perfect. CCPP Publishing. CCC publishing.com.
There you go.
There you go. Perfect. All right, Brad Olsen, thank you so much. It's truly an honor to have you on the screen with me today. And to you, oh, darling, to you lovely lot out there, I send you my love and I see you soon.